What was it like, roughly 30 years ago when you first started creating the Now music?
Well, so I was practicing so much jazz in the 80s, and I wanted to see if I could become a composer.
Mm.
And when I worked with the pen and pencil, I really saw myself as like Salieri.
Mm.
I was second rate Stravinsky, Bartok, Ligeti, anyone, Mozart, maybe third rate.
Yeah, so pencil and paper, it clearly wasn't
It
the
wasn't
right medium for you.
so in the early 90s, there was one day I was improvising. I was waiting for a recording date, and I don't know. I was just sitting and I'm sitting improvising. And I actually saw that my jazz playing was off the charts. It was like just better than just about anyone except 5 or 6 people. So I had achieved a goal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect in a lifetime to get somewhere and then nail it. So the funny part is we're supposed to enjoy the journey. But what happens when you get that goal? Well, the next logical thing, what can I do next?
Right.
So one fine day, and as you know, I always kept the Disklavier and record. And at that time, I was working with the floppies, and I never shut it off. So one fine day in the early 90s, I was studying the Rock 3 with the score and Ashkenazi playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm listening to this piece, and I actually thought of myself as a piece of shit.
Just because you were so, humbled.
Humbled.
Yeah.
And depression came in and it kept growing.
Oh, God.
And I'm a pretty up person, as you know, and it was unlike me,
Yeah.
So it was around midnight, and I was going to sleep depressed, and I saw the piano and I saw the record button on. I said, I got to do something. I just got to play. So I played, and what came out 13 minutes later was the sonata. I don't know, someone called it number 3, but it was my first sonata.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah.
You heard that one. It falls more on the romantic and Rachmaninoff. And so anyway, I wrote that piece, and I said, I'm not Rachmaninoff. I'm not Keith Jarrett. I'm not McCoy Tyner. I'm not Art Tatum. But I don't know too many people that can do this. And this sounds pretty good. I'm going to create a self-imposed discipline and start writing 30 etudes, all no longer than 20 seconds, so I could get chops together. But they all had to be atonal.
Mm.
So I had Alfred Music said they'd be willing to put out a few. And I didn't like that they said a few, so it pissed me off, so I ended up writing 100. Then I still was pissed off at them. I decided to do now 1, now 2, now 3, and I got up to 480 now. So when I did that sonata, I said, okay, that's my role. Yes, I can play jazz. I understand blues. I have a feel. I can get that jazz, cool, swinging kind of, and my ability to duplicate is very high, but I need my own music. And in that 10-year period, I had done about 3,200 pieces, of which I was batting. I mean, I was sick. I would get up 7 in the morning, and I'd be in that stupid room. No wonder the house burned down.
God.
God wanted me out of there. Stanley Clark came over one day and said, Mike, you got to get out of this house. You don't see the world. And here I am, balanced guy with a wife and kids and grandkids. And yet I would go in there 7 in the morning and come out at 3. So I would do sometimes 6 pieces in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was only batting 1 out of 10.
You mean you think about 1 out of 10 were pieces that you felt good about, that you were proud of?
The other 9 got me there. Now, because I write much less, they're 1 out of 2.
Right. Well, and because you've also got a couple decades of experience under your belt, composing in this particular way.
Right. So I also eventually, after 8 or 10 years, let go of it having to be atonal, and then
Yep.
after that, let go of it could be jazz. I'm still using the quote now concept because I believe that if improv is great, it's the highest level of composition. But because most of it isn't great, I would rather hear a composer's work than terrible improv. We wouldn't be having this conversation had you not mastered these pieces. My goal was never to play any of my pieces except a few of the ballads, because 1984, when the first sequences came out, one day Brief Light was improvising on a tune, and I ended up in my solo doing something like this. Something like that. And then we printed it out. The early days, so this is almost 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and we printed it out, and it took me 2 weeks to learn that.
Oh, right.
So I realized the two parts of my brain are totally different species.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, you can improvise something once in the moment, but that to actually approach it as a written piece of music and learn it that way could take, weeks or months. I was just thinking about the kind of discipline and framework that you imposed on yourself. I also am always looking to challenge myself and get out of my comfort zone. And certainly a couple of your pieces, 3x18 was definitely a piece that pushed me. And like I said, I haven't yet gotten to the point where I can even perform that live. I've only recorded it. But that's a good example of a piece that really captured my imagination many years ago. And it took me a long time to finally get around to, to really learning it.
A little insight into 3x18. So that piece was the slowest improv I ever did, because I knew I wanted it to be very hard. In a 10-year period when I was playing concerts, I would always do a now piece, but they always were a little sloppier, and they
Right.
weren't structurally as good because they were truly more improvised. I wanted these to be improvised, but compositional. Starting from the viewpoint I am right now, if I don't have the piano and record, but if somebody said, "Can you give me a 20-second etude at tempo?" I could go on in real time. So my concept was, don't be cocky and think you could write as good as Beethoven or Chopin in real time, but maybe if you slow it down and then speed it up to where you'd like a concert pianist to play it. And that was my mistake. Everything was always a little too fast, because I just, as a listener, liked the velocity.
Yeah.
Because, to be able to play, I can do it in jazz, really clean, but in classical, I needed a little more thought. So if I'm going, you speed that up 30%, it's kind of interesting, So I got into recording on the Disklavier, which is a modern day player piano, onto a floppy disk, and then in the sequencer, if I recorded it at 120, I could move it up to 140, 160, 240, wherever I thought. And that was the process. Now, I was aware, because I spoke to other composers and improvisers, some of them wanted me to edit them and make them better. Or two pieces and turn them into one and all that. And they asked me if I would consider doing that. And I said, let me think about it. So I thought about it, and I came back and I said, no, I would rather spend another 5 years getting better at this concept. So consequently, since 1971, 72, maybe 1970, I've been a one-take performer. I've done 1,000 recordings in the last year, and I have to say, they were all first takes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't know, I almost had a fist fight with Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins because we were doing the movie Stigmata, and the main theme came out, and he said, "Watch that, play something." So I sat down, whatever it was, and I knew it was the first take. And he says, "Try another one." So now when I screwed up, try another one. By the fifth one, he was saying, "You're not even close to where you started. Are you fucking with me? What's wrong with you?" So it got very contentious, but we loved each other. So I said, "Well, what happens when you record?" He said, "I get it on the 17th take."
That's the way I am.
That's wonderful. I get it on the first.